South Africa is one of the most diverse countries in the world. From incredible wildlife to striking mountain ranges and beautiful coastline. Add to that a fascinating culture and rich history, and it's easy to see why millions of tourists visit South Africa every year. But how do you even begin to explore everything South Africa has to offer? This video will cover our 19-day road trip across one of Africa's biggest and most beautiful countries, and hopefully help you to plan your own trip to South Africa. After collecting our rental car from Johannesburg Airport, we immediately hit the road and headed to our first destination of the trip, Graaf-Reinet. Along the way, we got our first flavour of driving on South Africa's roads and quickly began to realise the country's beauty. Graaf-Reinet would be our base for exploring the Panorama Route, a 160km stretch of road that lies in the province of Mpumalanga, roughly 400 kilometers northeast of Johannesburg. First stop on the Panorama Route was the 3 Rondavels viewpoint, overlooking the mighty Blyde River Canyon, which is one of the world's largest canyons. We then headed over to Blyde Canyon Forever Resort, where we did a hike combining multiple trails which start from the hotel. We experienced different views of the 3 Rondavels, as well as some beautiful waterfalls. The final stop of the day was God's Window, a famous viewpoint on the Panorama Route, accessed by climbing many stairs from the car park. Day 2 drew to a close with a beautiful sunset, the perfect way to wrap up our day exploring the Panorama Route. The next day, we headed towards Kruger National Park, one of Africa's largest and most iconic game reserves. It's home to the Big Five and an incredible diversity of wildlife. We spent 3 days in Kruger, basing ourselves in Skukuza Rest Camp, located in the southern part of the park. We spent most of our time self-driving Kruger, which we found was a great way to see lots of wildlife and at our own pace too. That said, we also did a few activities offered by the park itself, including a guided bushwalk and a night drive, which allowed us to experience Kruger in ways we couldn't from self-driving. After 3 days exploring Kruger, we were back out into normal civilization and on the road to Johannesburg, South Africa's largest city. We spent 2 nights in Johannesburg, giving us 1 full day to explore what the city had to offer. We decided to spend half our day visiting the southwestern townships, better known as Soweto, South Africa's largest township with a population of over 1 million people. We booked a bike tour, which was run by a local man who grew up in Soweto himself. We visited different parts of Soweto, including a lower class area where we were given a quick walking tour of the neighbourhood. After the bike tour, we visited the famous Vilakazi Street, which is where you will find the previous home of Nelson Mandela. The house has now essentially been converted into a museum, but it helped us to learn more about the great man himself and his former wife, Winnie Mandela. We left Soweto and headed to the Apartheid Museum, where we would spend the remainder of our day learning more about the country's painful past and the rise and fall of apartheid. The museum does an incredible job walking you through the course of South Africa's history. So even though it was a very tough experience, it felt like a massively rewarding one too. We came to Johannesburg having heard quite a few negative things about the city, but it ended up being the #1 highlight of our whole trip. The combined experiences of the Apartheid Museum and Soweto were unmatched by any other part of our trip. Learning about apartheid helped us understand how such a system created deep-rooted inequality, and visiting Soweto was a powerful reminder that its effects are still felt to this day. While still digesting our experiences in Johannesburg, we continued with our road trip to our next destination, Drakensberg, South Africa's highest and largest mountain range. We stayed in the city of Putijaba at the foothills of the Drakensberg Mountains, some 3 hours south of Johannesburg. We spent 2 days hiking in the area, with our biggest hike being to the top of Tugela Falls, which is regarded by some as the tallest waterfall in the world. The trail was a little technical at times and required some caution, but it generally was not too difficult overall. We really enjoyed our time hiking in Drakensberg, and we're really glad we were able to build it into our itinerary. Next on our trip was the Golden Gate Highlands National Park, which was perhaps the hidden gem of our whole trip. The national park is famous for its golden sandstone cliffs and unique rock formations. We only had one day to explore the park, but through a mix of hiking and self-driving, we managed to get a good glimpse of the beautiful scenery that you will find in the Golden Gate Highlands. We even got to experience sunset in the park, a great time of the day to be around as all the colours of the cliffs begin to change. We spent the night in the town of Clarence, as a big day of driving lied ahead of us the next day. Having spent a few days predominantly in the hiking part of our trip, we now had a long distance to cover to reach our next proper target destination, which was the town of Stormsriver, located on the country's southern coast. We decided to break up the 12-hour drive with 2 overnight stops. The first one was Gariep Dam, named after the large dam located in the town, and the second was the town of Graaf-Reinet, the oldest town in Eastern Cape. The town is beautifully nestled between mountains, and we decided to go up and see what the town looked like from above, with a visit to the Valley of Desolation. It is very accessible from the town, and you will find towering rock formations, some short hiking trails, and just all around beautiful scenery at the Valley of Desolation. After departing Graaf-Reinet, we were left with just 4 hours of driving to reach Stormsriver. This was definitely the most scenic part of the long drive, as the road winded its way through some impressive mountain views. It felt a little surreal finally reaching the sea after spending much of our first 12 days in mountainous areas. But we would quickly get used to the new surroundings, as we would be spending our final week of the trip on South Africa's southern coast. We spent our afternoon in Stormsriver at its river mouth, where it meets the Indian Ocean. The area is most famous for the series of suspension bridges that have been built to allow visitors to cross the river mouth and access further hiking trails. Stormsriver is also the starting point for perhaps South Africa's most famous stretch of road, the Garden Route, which spans around 300 kilometers from Stormsriver to Mossel Bay. People typically spend multiple days on the Garden Route, with there being so many different places to stop along the way. We only had one full day, but were still able to experience a lot of the highlights on the Garden Route. As with most road trips, we really witnessed the beauty when we left the car behind and explored on foot. After another day full of beautiful nature, we arrived in the town of Mossel Bay, which would be our penultimate destination of the trip. The next day, we set off on our final day of travelling as we continued west along South Africa's southern coast. We were heading to our final destination of the trip, Cape Town. We left ourselves 4 days in South Africa's most visited city, famous for its beaches, hiking opportunities, and vibrant food scene. The highlights of our time in Cape Town were a sunset hike up Lion's Head, hiking the Platteklip Gorge Trail up to the top of Table Mountain, a visit to Bokap, which is a neighbourhood with a lot of Cape Malay heritage, and of course, trying out Cape Town's local cuisine. We also dedicated a full day to exploring the Cape Peninsula, where we covered the Chapman's Peak Drive, Cape of Good Hope, as well as Boulders and Muizenberg Beach. And there you have it. 19 unforgettable days across one of the most diverse and breathtaking countries we've ever visited. I hope the itinerary covered in this video shows that it's possible to experience so much of what South Africa has to offer in just under 3 weeks, and that inspires you to visit yourself one day.